A man stumbled upon four little girls selling flowers on a street corner. They all had the same face, the same piercing eyes, just like the woman he walked away from 10 years ago. But there was one thing he didn't know. These children weren't strangers. They were his fate. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. The winter air settling over New York had draped the city in a soft, gray melancholy. Taxi horns, hurried footsteps on the sidewalk, the distant rumble of the subway. But inside David Grayson, all he could hear was silence. As the black Lincoln Navigator came to a stop at a red light on Fifth Avenue, his driver looked back and asked, "Mr. Grayson, should I head straight to the office?" Loosening his tie, David gazed out the window. "No, Marcus. I need to walk a bit. Drop me off here." The driver hesitated but pulled over without a word. David Grayson, 52 years old, CEO of the multi-billion-dollar Grayson Enterprises, one of Wall Street's coldest and most calculated minds. And yet, today, something inside him felt off. The Chin merger was done. Another major acquisition signed and sealed. Another win. And still, he felt empty. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, the doorman at the plaza tipped his hat with respect. David still carried the aura of his youth, but the silver threading through his hair revealed what the years had done not just to his career, but to his soul. He checked his watch. 40 minutes until the board meeting. He could make it. But then something caught his eye. On the corner of the sidewalk, for little girls wrapped in second-hand coats were selling flowers out of plastic buckets. They looked about 9 years old. A cardboard sign next to them read, "Hope Flowers, $5. David nearly kept walking. He passed dozens of street vendors every day. But these four little faces, they froze him in his tracks. The shape of their eyes, the sharp lines of their jaws, the quiet determination in their gaze, it all felt familiar, like ghosts from a time he tried to forget. Then the oldest-looking girl raised her head and locked eyes with him. And David forgot how to breathe. The world around him went silent. The taxis, the crowds, the subway vibrations all vanished. There were only those eyes. Ice blue eyes. Rachel's eyes. Not just one face. Four. For girls with the same face. Same eyes. Same expression. David's heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. He dropped his briefcase. His phone rang in his pocket, the sound like a slap. "Mr. Grayson? Are you running late for the meeting?" His assistant's voice came through his earpiece. "I'll call you back," he muttered, eyes still locked on the girls. The one who first noticed him, she stepped forward and held out a tiny bouquet. "Would you like some flowers, sir? They're only $5. That voice, that rhythm, it was like hearing Rachel as a child. Young, but full of strength. David crouched down, speaking softly. "What's your name?" "Emily. And these are my sisters Lily, Sophie, and Zoe. We're the flower girls." She smiled, missing a front tooth. "That's what everyone calls us." Emily. The name didn't ring a bell, but somehow it stirred something deep inside him. The smallest girl, Zoe, tugged gently at Emily's coat. "We have to go," Emily said. "Margaret will worry." In seconds, the girls scooped up their buckets and vanished into the crowd with practiced ease. David just stood there frozen. He didn't even pick up his briefcase. 10 years. It had been 10 years since he threw Rachel out of his house. That morning, she had cried as she told him she was pregnant. "It's a miracle," she had said. But David refused to believe it. The doctors had told him he was sterile. What miracle, he had snapped. "I can't have kids. So whose babies are they?" And now, for little girls. All with her face. All with her eyes. And in that moment, the ice fortress inside David Grayson cracked. David Grayson stood by the window at midnight, staring out at Manhattan's glittering skyline. He was holding a glass of whiskey, untouched. He hadn't even brought it to his lips. But the storm inside him burned brighter than any city light. He couldn't get those four little faces out of his mind. For different bodies, but one single face. Rachel's face. He set the glass down on the table. His hands were trembling slightly. For years, he had built his life around plans, deals, numbers, and forecasts. But no spreadsheet could have predicted what happened that day. There was no line on his to-do list for a moment like that. He walked to his office and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. From it, he pulled out a dusty leather box. He hadn't opened it in years. Inside were small pieces of the 5 years he had shared with Rachel, wedding photos, handwritten notes, birthday cards, and memories of that last night. He could hear her voice again. "It's a miracle, David. The doctors might have been wrong. These are your children. But his response had been ice cold. Every doctor said the same thing. I can't have kids, Rachel. Which means, your pregnancy has nothing to do with me. That night, Rachel left in tears. No explanation. She just placed her wedding ring on the pillow and walked out. David never looked back. But now those faces, those eyes. Back then, the person who'd blocked Rachel's letters and rushed the divorce was always the same. Vanessa Grayson. His sister. Vanessa had always been obsessed with preserving the Grayson family's image. She never accepted Rachel. And as David's most trusted advisor at the time, she had shaped many of his decisions, maybe too many. Now, doubt was growing inside him like a snowball rolling downhill. Had Vanessa not just turned him against Rachel, but also blocked her messages? What if she even influenced the doctors? David grabbed his phone and called his head of security. Marcus, I need you to start looking into something. For girls, around 9 years old. Identical. I need to find them. He paused for a second. And, Rachel Carter. Find out where she is. What happened to her? That night, a cold moon hung over Manhattan. But for the first time, David felt a fire inside him. A real one. The next morning, he got ready earlier than usual. No suit. Just a simple sweater and jeans. He hadn't felt this human in years. He walked back to Fifth Avenue, to the very corner where the girls had been selling flowers the day before. He waited. 3 hours. His phone rang again and again. Messages buzzed in. He didn't answer a single one. And finally, they appeared. Tiny figures in mismatched jackets, dragging plastic buckets filled with wilted flowers. That same seriousness on their faces. That same light in their eyes. It was them. David watched from the side. The oldest Emily was guiding her sisters like a natural leader. When a man accidentally knocked over one of their buckets, the smallest nearly cried, but didn't. Sophie wrapped an arm around her protectively. And Lily, while picking up the flowers, hummed a cheerful tune. They moved in perfect rhythm like they'd been raised by the same strong hand. Rachel's hand. David followed them quietly, trying not to lose sight of them in the crowd. He watched as they went to a deli, then a bakery. They pulled their coins together and bought a single sandwich, then split it into 4 equal parts. The sight shattered David. These girls, possibly his daughters, were sharing one sandwich, while he had spent $400 on dinner the night before. Then they entered an old apartment building. Cracked walls, taped windows, a faded sign at the entrance. Hope Harbor, Women and Children's Shelter. David froze on the sidewalk. Rachel Carter, the woman who was once his wife, was living in a shelter now. And the girls, were they his? Right then his phone rang. It was Marcus. Mr. Grayson, I have information you need to hear right away. Rachel Carter has been in jail for the last 4 months. David's knees nearly buckled. In jail? He whispered. Yes, sir. She was caught stealing food from a small market. 6-month sentence. The girls are currently under the care of Margaret Thompson, an ex-social worker. David hung up. He stared at the shelter entrance, not blinking. He had made a terrible mistake years ago, but he wouldn't make it again. He would never let those girls be alone again. For the first time in his life, David Grayson walked into a place without a name, a title, or any expectations. When he stepped through the doors of the Hope Harbor Women and Children's Shelter, he wasn't a CEO. He was just a man carrying the weight of regret. He'd spent decades in cold offices, glued to spreadsheets and profit margins. But now, with every step, he was returning to the place where his heart had once learned how to beat. The woman who greeted him was Margaret Thompson, an older lady, worn by time, but with eyes that still held steady strength. She took one look at David's plain clothes and saw right through them. He wasn't there to help. He was there for something else, something deeper. How can I help you, mister? Margaret asked, holding his gaze. Mr. Parker, David replied after a slight pause. He wasn't ready to use his real name. Not yet. I recently sold my tech company. Been thinking a lot lately. I want to spend my time doing something meaningful. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing, she said coolly. We just happen to need a volunteer adult to help our flower girls today. David froze. Flower girls? Margaret nodded, then motioned toward the wall where children's drawings were taped up. For different sheets, nearly identical faces. Under each, Emily, Lily, Sophie, and Zoe. They had drawn flower bouquets, the same ones he'd seen them selling in the street. Their mother taught them, Margaret said. Rachel, maybe you don't know her. David lowered his head. His voice was quiet, shaken. I know her. Margaret's expression softened. Well, it shows. Emily's the responsible one. Lily's quiet but creative. Sophie's protective. And Zoe, she's the dreamer. Finding someone they can trust isn't easy, especially if you're a man. You'll have to pass a trust test first. David's eyes welled up for a moment, but he held it together. I'm willing to try. That first day, he helped serve soup in the cafeteria. The girls watched him carefully from a distance, reserved but observant. Emily, the eldest, ladled soup with practiced focus. Zoe smiled shyly at each child who walked in. Lily arranged the trays with a quiet grace. Sophie kept scanning the room, almost like she was always ready to defend. Hi, David said gently. I'm just helping with the food today. They all gave him a polite nod, but none of them spoke, except for Zoe, who gave a tiny wave, barely lifting her hand. That evening, Margaret pulled him aside. They seem a little less distant today, but don't take it personally. They don't trust easily. Years of being lied to, abandoned. It leaves a mark. David nodded slowly. I'm patient, and I'm not going anywhere. Margaret studied him. Good, because what they need most is someone who stays. In the days that followed, David joined the girls on their flower-selling rounds. At first, he just carried the buckets. Quiet, observing. But eventually, conversations began. Emily showed him how they calculated their earnings. Lily explained which flowers were best for which occasions. Sophie lectured him on safety. And one day, Zoe tugged his sleeve and whispered, "Are you really here to help us?" David's throat tightened. Yes, Zoe. I'll do everything I can. As weeks passed, David's world began to change. He stopped rushing to board meetings. He preferred the subway with the girls. Evenings were no longer spent at fancy restaurants, but stirring soup in Hope Harbor's kitchen. His suits were replaced with worn jackets. His spreadsheets replaced by crayon drawings. One afternoon, Emily came up to him with a handful of crumpled dollars and change. We send money to my mom's prison account every week, she said. But this week, we're short. In that moment, David felt his soul collapse, not from guilt alone, but from heartbreak. A little girl, worried about her mom's prison allowance, while he had spent years denying the very idea of being a father. That same night, while helping Margaret clean up the kitchen, he asked, "Why are they so different from one another? I mean, they're identical, right?" Margaret smiled. Rachel gave each of them a name with purpose. Emily for strength, Lily for grace, Sophie for wisdom, Zoe for life. David looked away. Rachel was still shaping their identities, while he remained nothing but a fading shadow from the past. "Would you let me get to know them?" he asked, voice low but steady. Margaret paused. "You don't need to ask me." She looked at him with quiet intensity. "You'll have to ask them." And in that moment, David Grayson realized he had just taken his very first step toward becoming a father. By the end of his third month at Hope Harbor, David Grayson was no longer a stranger. He'd built a bond with the girls so genuine that the quiet walls of the shelter had started to feel like home. The children still called him Mr. Parker, but Zoe had gotten used to leaning against his arm whenever she sat next to him. Lily had started sharing her colored pencils. Sophie willingly gave him the job of carrying the flower buckets. And Emily watched closely. Her eyes followed his every move, like she was trying to solve a secret hidden beyond words. One Saturday afternoon, after the flower sales had quieted down, David was sitting on a bench. The girls were playing by the fountain nearby, laughing softly. But suddenly, Sophie stopped. She turned toward him, eyes narrowed. "Why do you sometimes look at us differently?" she asked. David blinked. "What do you mean?" "Like you're memorizing our faces," Sophie said. "Your eyes change like you're taking a picture." Her gaze pierced right through him, eyes that mirrored his younger self. He couldn't answer. Not yet. But he knew. Time was running out. Zoe walked over quietly. "Mom has a box," she said. "She keeps really special things in it. Sometimes she opens it, doesn't cry, just gets really quiet." Then Emily appeared, silent as ever. "There's a photo in that box," she said, "of a man. He was her husband once. His name was David Grayson." David's heart raced. Sophie was studying his face, trying to read it. "He has eyes like ours," she added. "Just like you." Silence. For small hands found each other. Emily spoke again. "Are you him?" David swallowed hard. His eyes were wet. But this moment was theirs, not his. Even then, he couldn't bring himself to say it. "I'm just someone who wants to help," he said softly. The girls looked at each other. Emily nodded. "Okay," she replied. "But we're watching you, Mr. Parker." That night, David went to see Margaret. When he entered her office, she was laying out a stack of old letters on the desk, each one addressed to him, each one sent by Rachel Carter over the years, each one marked, "Return to sender, recipient unknown." "Rachel tried to reach you," Margaret said quietly. "She sent these to Grayson Tower. Most of them came back unopened." David picked one and carefully unfolded it. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting a bit shaky. "Today our daughters were born. For tiny miracles. Emily, Lily, Sophie, and Zoe. They share the same face, but their souls are so different. I'm writing because I want to share this miracle with you. Maybe what you denied is real. Maybe one day, your eyes will meet theirs." David's hands trembled. If he had read this back then, his whole life might have been different. Margaret's voice pulled him from the letter. "You need to get a DNA test." David nodded. "I will, but I'll be the one to tell them. And Rachel too." That night, he made another decision. He instructed his private security team to look into Rachel Carter's case. Then he contacted attorney Amanda Cole. Every file, every court order, every letter, it would all be reviewed. And the next day, he would go to the prison. He would finally look Rachel in the eyes after all these years and face the truth together. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep, David walked into Zoe's room and saw the drawing pinned to her wall. 5 figures. For little girls. 1 mother. And a blank space beside them. Emily had drawn it. They hadn't drawn a father. Or maybe, they were just waiting for someone to finally fill that space. To David Grayson, prison walls had always seemed cold, distant places that belonged to someone else's life. But that morning, standing in the visitor line, they felt like the concrete embodiment of his own past. And everything he had failed to do. He handed over the contents of his pockets to security. His hands were empty, but his heart was full of years of weight. Today, he was going to face Rachel Carter. And more importantly, he was going to face himself. When he was led into the visiting room behind a glass partition, Rachel wasn't there yet. He sat down. His heart was racing, but on the outside, he was stone still. Then she walked in, tired but proud. Her face showed the years, but her eyes, they were still the same. When she saw him, she froze. For a few long seconds, she neither moved nor spoke. She just stared. Then slowly, she sat down. She reached for the phone. David mirrored her. "What happened to you?" Rachel asked. "You disappeared for 10 years. And now you show up." David swallowed hard. The answer was simple and shameful. "I saw you," he said. "In the street. With the girls. I saw them. I saw you." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "So now you believe it? Because they have your eyes?" David lowered his head. "I never got your letters. All these years. I stayed away because my sister, Vanessa, she cut off contact. She may have even influenced your doctor." "Vanessa?" Rachel whispered. Then she really succeeded. David pulled an envelope from his coat pocket, something he had been allowed to bring in with special clearance. Inside were DNA results. He held them up against the glass. 99.9999% match. "They're mine. All 4 of them." Rachel closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't break. Another wall inside her simply crumbled. "Do they know?" she asked. "Not yet," David said. "But I'm going to tell them. Today." Rachel took a deep breath. "Then all I ask is this, David. If you're going to step back into their lives, don't ever leave them again." David nodded. "I won't. Not them. And not you. I'm getting you out of here. We've proven that your letters were blocked, that the judge was influenced by Vanessa. My lawyers are working on it." Rachel looked away. "And Vanessa?" David's eyes hardened. "I'll deal with her too." 2 days later, in the small office at Hope Harbor, 4 little girls sat across from him. Emily was in front, the others gathered around. Margaret stood nearby, watching quietly. David began softly. "I haven't always told you the full truth. But today, there's something I need to say." 4 pairs of icy blue eyes turned toward him. Emily's brow was furrowed. Sophie's fists were clenched. Lily's eyes shimmered with tears. Zoe tilted her head. Just listening. David took a breath. "My name isn't Parker. My real name is David Grayson. I was once married to Rachel Carter." Silence. Then Emily spoke, the man in Mom's special box. "That's me," David said. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Then, "Why weren't you there?" David looked down. "Because I didn't believe your mother. I made a terrible mistake. I didn't think you were mine. So I never came. But I was wrong. And it's the greatest regret of my life." Sophie stepped forward. "Then why are you here now?" Tears finally filled David's eyes. Because I've seen you. I've seen your hearts, your strength, your kindness, your courage. And I don't just want to be your biological father. I want to be your real father. If you'll let me. Zoe reached out her tiny hand. I will. Lily walked over next. Then Sophie. Emily hesitated, then stepped forward and nodded. On one condition, she said. You don't disappear. You don't leave. David dropped to one knee. I won't. I promise. 1 year later, there was a birthday party in Central Park. For small tables. For unique cakes. Emily's cake was covered in pencils. Lily's had flowers. Sophie's had magnifying glasses. And Zoe's? A sky full of stars. Rachel had started her own business, a small, love-filled flower shop. She donated to Hope Harbor every month. David still ran Grayson Enterprises. But its focus had changed. Homeless children, women's shelters, scholarships. Vanessa Grayson? She was on trial. Publicly disgraced. No longer a part of David's life. As the children played, David and Rachel watched from a distance. They're growing up together, Rachel said. David smiled. And this time, we're not just watching. Rachel squinted into the sunlight, smiling. You know, maybe the most beautiful flowers really do grow in the toughest soil. David rested his hand gently over hers. And now, those flowers finally have strong roots. As the girls blew out their candles, the candle smoke drifted into the sky, not just as a wish, but as a beginning. This time, it wasn't just hope. It was a real family. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We share hearts that find each other, second chances, and real connections.